Hey, I'm Doc here on the Midnight Chronicles podcast. I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, Luke and Zane. Guys, welcome back to the show.
What's up, Doc?
What's up, Doc?
Nothing much, other than almost cutting off my fingers this morning. But Luke, I know that you're not feeling very well tonight, but I do appreciate you being here. We are also joined today by Casey, your friend Casey from In Tundra.
Yeah.
Hey, Casey, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys?
Nothing much. All right, so let's get into it.
For the record, I'll do just fine. I drank like a half a bottle of Robitussin a little bit ago, so things might get a little freaky.
Yeah, we can tell. But hey, Luke, Zane, do me a favor. Tell both of your mothers hi for me and thank them for last night.
Oh, all right. Yep.
Yeah, she said a little short guy stopped over.
Yep. That explains the fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say something bit you, but I ain't going to go there.
Well, all right, guys, let's get into it. So, Casey, you're here today to talk to us about what you think is a poltergeist that you experienced.
I would assume that's what you'd classify it as. Yep.
All right. Well, do you want to go into further detail about that? What exactly did you experience?
Well, it all started in would have been the spring of 2019. Me and my 5-year-old daughter moved into a house in town here. I live in a little town called Paranormal, Minnesota. If you can't tell by my accent, I'm from Minnesota. But yeah, we moved into it was a little 2-bedroom, one bath house. It was probably built in the late 50s, early 60s, I'd say. And yeah, we moved in and everything was normal at first or whatever. And I don't know. It just it started out with what I would refer to as like shadows in the corner of your eyes, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The layout of my house. So my living room, like if you imagine north, south, east, west, my living room, if I was sitting on my couch in the living room, the TV would be on the north wall. On the west end of the north wall was an entrance to a hallway, and our bedrooms, the hallway would have ran parallel to the north wall, so run east and west, whatever. So at the end of each hallway, on the west side would have been my bedroom. On the east side was my daughter's bedroom, and if you walk straight north, you'd walk into the bathroom. It wasn't a very big house. So anyway, the first things I noticed was I'd be sitting on the couch in the evening watching TV, and I'd see something zip across the hallway out of the corner of my eye, and I could never see exactly what it was. It was always just like the tail of a shadow, if that made any sense.
Yeah.
It would, and at first I kind of chalked it up to, must just be headlights coming through the window or whatever, but it'd be the middle of the night, like 3:00 in the morning sometimes. And whatever, I'd go to the bathroom to take a leak, and I'd be walking back to my bedroom or whatever, and I'd get like the hair on the back of my neck would stand up, and I'd just catch something out of the corner of my eye. But I could never see it. You could never get a direct line of view on it. It was always moving, always. Every time I ever saw it, it was moving, and it was just out of the corner of my eye, and I'd look and it'd be gone. So that's how it started, I guess.
Okay. And you mentioned in the pre-interview that there was somebody that was murdered in your house.
Oh, yeah. I probably should have led with that, but it came a little later in the story when I found that out. So things got a lot weirder, but there was a daycare right next door to my house. The property lines, wasn't even a fence or anything like that split. So I'd go visit with the neighbors every now and then if I was out mowing the lawn or whatever. And it was an elderly couple. They were probably in their late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, when I first moved into Parum or whatever, we heard about a guy that got murdered here in town. This is a small town. Stuff like that doesn't happen very often. But it was 2 roommates living together, and one guy murdered the other guy with a spoon. He stabbed him in the eye with a spoon.
Oh, my God.
The guy had...
Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry.
Are you serious?
No, I'm dead serious. So
I did not see that go in that direction right there.
Yeah.
You can get up to the pearly gates and, how did you die? I was murdered with a spoon.
No, I shit you not. So I was visiting with my neighbor, and she's, I had actually asked her. Like I said, this would have came a little later in the story, but I'd asked her if the people here noticed anything weird or anything, ever mentioned anything to her about weird stuff happening in the house. She's like, well, you do know the people that lived there before you, one of them got murdered there, right? And the other one's in jail. So I did not know this. This was unbeknownst to me. So she
I
kind of told
remember
me,
hearing about that.
yeah, she told me the story. And apparently they'd get drunk and fight all the time.
Yeah.
And, it ended in tragedy, I guess. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Casey. How long ago was that murder occurred?
it would have been, so I moved in the spring of 2019, so it would have been in the fall of 2018. The house sat empty.
Was fairly recent then. Okay.
Yep. The house sat empty for the winter before I moved in. Yep.
Oh, yeah, to air out.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
They had to get the spoons out. Yeah. God. Yeah, I was going to say.
No soup in that house, I bet.
What'd you say, Zane? Sorry.
I said, I bet you they don't eat soup in that house anymore.
Oh,
No spoons.
Probably not.
I'd never keep a spoon in that house.
Good God. Yeah, it gives a whole new definition to spooning. Sorry.
You guys are terrible.
Yeah, welcome to the Midnight Chronicles.
I just never would have imagined or never would have thought that, the guy got stabbed with a spoon. Got killed with a spoon. That caught me completely off guard.
Well, it caught the whole town off guard. Like I said, nothing. Well,
What a fucking way to go, huh?
I remember.
Right?
I remember hearing that somebody got murdered in town because, like I said, Luke, how many people live in Perham? Maybe
A couple thousand.
Is it that small? 3, 5? I guess
3,000, something like that. 3,500. Yeah.
Yeah. So murder is a big deal here.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So is your mom.
Huh?
God.
Huh? What?
Oh my God, what have we done?
Casey's mom.
Yeah, okay. At least we haven't had to use the swearing jar yet, so yeah, keep the nose to yourself.
Luke might be my brother. My dad and his mom have history, so
yeah. Yeah. So picking back up, why do you think it was a poltergeist?
Oh, I'll get it. I'll get there. So things escalated rather quickly, I'd say. So like I said, my 5-year-old daughter lived with me too, and her bedroom was on the opposite end of the hallway as mine. So whatever, I seen shadows for maybe a month at first, and what happened next was I would be in bed and I'd hear cabinet doors and shit opening in the kitchen and silverware drawer and shit like that. So naturally, I assumed it was
the spoon.
the spoon. What the fuck? Oh man! Oh, there's your swear jar.
Yeah,
there it is. Oh man!
The haunted spoon.
It's the spoon. The spoons were spooning. No, so I'd hear cabinet doors opening and stuff in the kitchen. So naturally, I assumed it was my daughter, So I'd go out into the kitchen to chew her butt, and I end up going in the kitchen, and like this happened on numerous occasions too. I'd go out in the kitchen, and the snack drawer cupboard would be open, or one of the drawers would be slid out, and I'd go out there, and my daughter wasn't in there, and I'd go, figured she snuck back to bed, and I'd go in there, and she'd be sound asleep.
Yeah.
So that's when it started to get kind of strange, and I guess. Like I said in the beginning, naturally I'm a skeptic, so whatever. I've never experienced anything like this before I lived there, and I've never experienced anything like this since I left there. But it ended up escalating from there. So maybe a week or two later, I woke up in the middle of the night, and no, it wasn't. It wasn't even the middle of the night. I woke up the next day, and all of my drawers in my dresser were all pulled out and flipped completely upside down on the floor in my bedroom, but all the clothes were still in each drawer. Like, like you flipped the whole dresser upside down, slid the drawers out of it so nothing fell out of the drawers, and stood the dresser back up. Or whatever. And that was the first thing that freaked me out. Like,
Yeah.
because it didn't make any sense. Like, it didn't even seem possible, because like I said, when I started taking the drawers apart to put back in my dresser, all the clothes were still in a neat pile. And if you like flip the drawer over, everything would have fell out. You know what I mean? So whatever. That's when I started talking to people about it. And that was when I talked to the neighbors about it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And my girlfriend, which is now my wife or whatever, she thought I was freaking nuts. Obviously, I was telling her about it. She thought I was losing my shit.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, no, I mean, like, it's whatever. So I don't know. A little later on, my brother-in-law came to stay with me for a couple days, and I didn't say anything to him about any of the stuff that was going on or whatever.
Yeah.
And the first night, he slept out on the couch in the living room, and the next morning he asked me about like traffic or whatever. He's like, "Man, you got traffic going through your place like at all hours of the night." It's like I kept seeing like shadows on the wall in the living room, and like I said, I never said anything to him about any of this or whatever. And
so he pretty much corroborated what was going on in the house. Yeah. Okay.
right, that's how I took it or whatever.
Yeah.
Still, I didn't bring it up to him, and so this went on, the cupboard things, and that was the only time my dresser ever got, like, anything in my bedroom ever got messed with or whatever. But I kept seeing shadows after that and hearing stuff in the living room, and the next escalation would come later in the story or whatever. But after I told Katie about it, which is my wife now or whatever, she didn't believe me. She thought I was nuts. And sometimes I'd have her pick my daughter up from daycare and run her home. I'd get home later than she would, so sometimes she'd grab my daughter for me, bring her to my house, wait for me to get home, and she'd go back to her house at the time.
Yeah.
And one day she called me. I was driving truck, and she called me, and she's like, "I think I should call the cops or whatever." I'm like, "Why? What's going on?" She's like, "There's somebody in your house." She's like, "I pulled in the driveway, and there was somebody in your window looking out into the driveway or whatever. There's somebody in your house." So I was a few minutes out or whatever, so I told her I'd be there, and got home. We went inside, looked through the whole house. There was nobody in the house, and she swore up and down like there was somebody standing in my kitchen window, looking out at the driveway. The kitchen window, it's a straight line sight to you can't miss the kitchen window. So that was the first time somebody else saw something for sure in my house. Like, she swears up and down she saw something for sure.
Can you go into further detail about what she saw? Did she describe it?
Yeah, she did. She said she saw she couldn't see any features. It was like just a dark silhouette. Like they were standing far enough away from the window that she couldn't make any features. It was just a dark silhouette, and she described it as like a broad built guy, like a broader built top stature,
Yeah.
But like I said, there was nobody in the house. So I'll pause there, I guess, and anybody got input or questions?
So throughout any of this, did you question like your own sanity at all?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Like,
the
the
dresser
first thought
thing.
that comes to my mind would be like, God damn, I'm schizophrenic, like.
No, the first thing that actually came to my mind was that I was sleepwalking.
Okay.
So, but like I said, the dresser. I wish I had an image that I could show you, because it made no sense. So the weird part about it was like my sock drawer was the top drawer, t-shirts was the next drawer down, pants was the next drawer down, then sweatshirts were on the bottom, right? So everything was completely inverted though, where my sock drawer was at the bottom, t-shirts, and every drawer, I said, everything was still in a neat stack. It just didn't make any sense.
All right, this is going to sound like a joking question, but I'm dead serious. Was there anything questionable in your dresser?
No.
Okay.
No, I had kids in the house, and anything questionable I had in my house or whatever. I had my gun safe had a bottom cabinet or whatever that you could lock.
Right.
So anything I didn't want anybody to have access to went in there.
Yeah.
Right.
The gentleman that was murdered with the spoon in the eyeball there, how big of a guy was he?
I have no idea. I never met him. I don't know anybody that knew him. I don't even think they were from town. I think they were working like potatoes or something, like a potato harvest here in town, and they were just renting the house for a couple months.
Okay.
Okay. I was just curious. You said the figure was stockier, so I don't know if it kind of matched the silhouette of the other guy.
Sure.
But just curious on that. But
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to ask. So do either of you have any questions for him? Any more questions before he continues?
Yeah. So no, the reason I asked if there was any questionable items in the dresser, like for instance, like a whammy bar or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like something that a possible entity might find offensive or
Yeah.
playful.
Right.
So, it like I said, it sounded stupid, but in context, it was a serious question. So,
Yeah. Did you think to record any of this, like take pictures or
No, I wish I would have. Like I said, I was total skeptic, man. I just thought, like Luke had a good question. Like that's probably where I was at the time. Was like, am I losing my, am I losing my mind a little bit here? So, and no, I didn't. And whatever. As far as anybody that actually saw anything, the only person Katie saw it twice. The only person that ever saw anything was Katie. It never interacted with me. I never had any kind of interaction. But my daughter also had interactions with whatever, something. I'll get to that. But granted, like mind you, my daughter was 5 at the time too. So,
yeah.
But I guess I can continue. So, every now and then, Katie lived a couple blocks from the house I'm at or whatever. So if we ever wanted to have any alone time without kids or whatever, either she'd swing over to my house and she'd put the phone on a Zoom call like we're on right now.
Yeah.
On the kids' door or whatever, or vice versa. I'd put it, in Kinley's room. So whatever. So we could visually see or hear if there was anything going on, if we had to run, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Run back to the house. So one night I put my phone on Zoom and I ran over to Katie's place for whatever, 10, 15 minutes. And when I got there, she was like freaking out and told me to come look at her phone. And so I did. I went over there and I didn't see nothing on her phone. It was just my daughter sleeping or whatever. And she's like, there was somebody standing over Kinley. You need to go back home, So
that's
I
terrifying.
did.
That's terrifying.
Again, it was a black silhouette. That's all she could see. It was further back in the room or whatever from where Kinley's bed was. And she couldn't make out features. It was just a silhouette standing in my daughter's room.
Yeah.
So naturally, I hauled ass home. I thought somebody was in my house or whatever. And again, nothing. Kinley was sound asleep. Nothing in the house. Nothing odd. Nothing, whatever. So, Were you asking me a question, Luke?
No, I was just taking it in.
Okay.
yeah, think about how freaky that is, especially having it in your daughter's bedroom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Having it stand over your daughter, I can't imagine, the kind of terror that you felt and the sense of urgency that you would need to get to your daughter to make sure she was safe.
Yeah, I hauled ass home.
That reminds me, Doc, and Luke, when I was telling you about that big house that I lived in when I was a kid growing up, and I never had anything like that happen, but I know my 2 siblings and my mom and dad had stuff like that happen all the time in that house.
Okay.
Yep.
I was too young to even know,
Yeah.
what the hell was going on, but they had a lot of that stuff going on where there'd be silhouettes in the doorways or walking through the hallways, or you could hear footsteps upstairs or something crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of getting into what we talked about last show, Casey, when you moved into that house, did you notice a change in your own temperament or in your own mood?
Well, so when I moved into that house, it actually started off kind of messed up because I told Luke about this. I almost had accidentally had, I don't know the lure behind all this stuff or whatever. So, when I moved into the house, my first night there, it was actually just me. My daughter was at my mom's house, and the house sat empty for the winter. I moved in on like a Sunday. It was like a Sunday night is what it ended up being. So the power hadn't got turned on yet. They couldn't turn the power on to the next day. So my first night I spent in that house was candlelit. It was completely candlelit, the whole house. I had like 10 candles in the house. I had one in the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, my bedroom, whatever. I had the whole house lit with candlelight, right? And so my first night in that house, it was just like bad juju. It was really creepy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, candlelit, being in a strange place. I'd never been there. The house is older, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it was just a bad, eerie feeling. But nothing out of the ordinary happened the first night I was there.
Okay. All right. Well,
So where did it go from there?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to know next. Where did it go from there?
Okay, so that time that Katie saw the entity, whatever you want to call it, in Kinley's room, that was after that is when Kinley started saying weird stuff. You know, I think it or whatever started interacting with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So she'd come wake me up in the middle of the night and say it was cold. Like her house or her bed was actually right by the I had a natural gas furnace. The duct in her room was like right by her bed.
Mm.
The register is the word I was looking for. And she'd come wake me up and say she was cold, and it'd be like 80 degrees in her room or whatever. And she just felt something cold, like, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
and it'd give her goosebumps or whatever. And nothing like, I don't know how to, like, nothing bad happened to her or anything like that. But she'd wake me up in the middle of the night saying she heard stuff in her closet or whatever. And I'd go open her closet. And I like rewind here. I never said anything around my daughter about any of this stuff. I never said anything to my daughter about any of this stuff. You know, why would I? You know, I didn't want to scare her or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the kind of interaction she had. Things going bump in the night, basically, you know?
Okay. So she never described seeing anything or okay.
Nope. But so the last part of the story, I guess, I didn't live there very long because my daughter actually ended up saving my life. But shit didn't get too wild. Like I said, the stuff in the kitchen happened a couple times a week, though. That happened all the time. Drawers in the kitchen opening, it happened all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the very last thing that happened, I can't, you know, like I said, I can't say this was the entity that did this or whatever, but it's pretty bizarre what happened. So I had a natural gas furnace, and they're not known for the plenums cracking in them at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had O2 sensors in my house too, carbon monoxide sensors.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I don't remember any of this because whatever. The furnace was closest to my room. The first register off the furnace was my room. Then my daughter's room was on the complete other end of the house or whatever. And my daughter had got up in the middle of the night, and this is toward the end of summer, getting into winter time or whatever. And she ended up opening her window because she was hot. And whatever, the plenum had cracked in the furnace, and I got carbon monoxide poisoning. I didn't wake up. The next morning, I was supposed to take her to school. She couldn't wake me up. She ended up going to the neighbor's house because she couldn't get me up. And the neighbors called the ambulance. They got a hold of my wife. It was wife now, girlfriend then, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how it went down. Like I said, I wouldn't get up. I couldn't. When I finally did get up, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath. I was delusional. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just got carbon monoxide poisoning. I hadn't had oxygen or whatever. So
Did you wake up there or did you wake up in the hospital?
I woke up there. I remember the first thing I remember is sitting on the couch with Katie. Katie was there. She ended up bringing me to the hospital. The ambulance didn't come get me. She got me to the hospital. They ran a bunch of tests on me. It's actually kind of messed up because they ran a bunch of tests on me. We're into 2020 now.
Mm-hmm.
So they thought I had COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had no idea.
Of
None of the
course.
O2 sensors in the house went off. Okay, so they thought I had COVID or whatever. They did blood work. Sent me home, and I got home and I started feeling like my daughter's at school now. At this time, she got to school, and I got home and I started feeling like crap again and started getting real groggy and delusional. And I get a call from the hospital. They're like, first thing they asked me if I slept in my car, with my car running. I'm like, no, why? Like, were you in your garage with your car running? I'm like, no, why? And they kept asking me questions like that. And they're like, well, what is your house heated with? And I told them that, natural gas. And they're like, you need to get out of your house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did my blood work or whatever. The carbon monoxide in my blood was like through the roof or whatever. So that's figured out I had carbon monoxide poisoning or whatever. So I leave, for the day or whatever, get a hold of the furnace guy. Well, the furnace guys called me a little later on in the afternoon when they got there or whatever. And all my O2 sensors in my house are going nuts. There's like 4 of them in the house. They're all going off. Not a one of them went off. Katie can vouch for that. Not a single one of them went off. And whatever, they fixed the furnace. I guess that's not the end of the story, because we were there for a couple more weeks after that. And I don't know if what you contributed to, because I've never had this happen prior, and I have never had it happen since, but I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't move. Like, I'd be awake, but I couldn't move at all. Like, I'd try to sit up. I couldn't. It freaked me out. I couldn't move.
Right. Sounds like sleep paralysis, which is what
Sleep
we were talking
paralysis.
about.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about last show. Yeah. That's what that sounds like. Yeah.
And it wasn't too long after that. After Katie was, and aware of all this, and I ended up moving in with her a couple of weeks after that. So, and I've never had anything weird happen since. I've never had anything weird happen before. I'm half tempted. I mean, I still lived in the same town. Somebody bought the house after me, after I left or whatever. And I've been tempted so many times to go over there and ask, if they've had anything weird happen since they've lived there.
Would you say that this entity or whatever it is that you experienced in that house, is that the main reason you moved out, or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
The sleep paralysis, if that, whatever you want to, that scared the shit out of me. Because I've never had that happen. It's actually terrifying if you've ever had it happen. It's like I wake up
during the sleep paralysis. Did you see anything?
Yeah, I was going to ask him that. Yeah,
didn't see anything. Didn't feel nothing. Ever messed with me physically. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I never felt a touch. I never felt anything of that nature. I just wake up and I could see down the hall. So the way my bed laid, I could see down the hallway into my daughter's room. And I always remember every time that happened, I'd wake up and I'd look, because like I could see, and I'd look down into my daughter's room and I'd want to get up to go check on her, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't move. It felt like there was like 1,000 pounds on my body or something. It just didn't make sense.
Okay,
so part of what we discussed last week was that people that see this. Have you ever heard of the Hat Man?
The Hat Man?
Yeah.
That's like a southern lore, isn't it? I think I have.
Well, kind of. So it's actually all over the place. It's kind of a form of a shadow person, right? And a lot of people that experience the exact same thing, which a lot of them, it tends to coincide with sleep paralysis, like you experience. And the Hat Man, it's like a shadowy figure of a tall, just black shadow of a man, like lurking, around the corner, lurking in the corner of your room, down a hallway or whatever, just lurking. Never does anything physical or anything like that, but it just lurks.
Yeah.
I did some digging into the Hat Man after last episode. And Zane, you asked me if the Hat Man has ever made any sort of communication, if it's ever said anything. I watched a documentary about it where it has actually happened, where it's actually said things to the people that it is haunting. I think one of the reports I think I read or saw in the documentary, the Hat Man was standing there, and the person had woken up and saw it standing there, and it said to them, "You belong to me." So it has communicated before. So I'm looking more into that, because a lot of the questions that you asked last time, Zane, I didn't know the answer to. So I looked more into it, but yeah, it actually has communicated before.
The biggest one with me was why is it the same figure that everybody's seeing? What's behind that?
That's my question as well. Yeah, that's my question as well.
And when I told a little bit of the story of my friend JR, that had an experience, and he said it was a demonic experience, right? But anytime things would go crazy, this Hat Man thing would be around, and he said it seemed like that thing was like the ringleader of the whole deal. Right?
Yes, yeah, like, that is commonly reported, that if you are being haunted by the Hat Man, it is the ringleader behind all of the paranormal activity that's happening in your house. Whenever it shows up, whenever it's there, that activity is about to escalate, and it's about to escalate very, very fast.
Now, Casey, when you weren't able to move, laying in bed, how long would that last? Would that last for minutes, hours, or?
I'd end up going back to sleep. I just.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I'd never experienced anything like that before. So I didn't attribute it to anything. Like I attribute it to like, I just had carbon monoxide poisoning. This must be a side effect,
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought. So,
Right.
Yeah. Sleep paralysis can be a medical condition too. I'm sorry. Did somebody else have something to say?
well, I was going to say, with you guys talking about the Hat Man or whatever, my experience, I don't think anything was, haunting me. It almost seemed more like something was, it was its domain. It was doing its thing, its domain, like it was.
It was doing its daily routine.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yep. Just like if you weren't even there, it was just doing its thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really similar to. Yep, that's really similar to another story that I've heard, which is my friend JR, and I touched on this a little bit on the last episode too. Was he would see like they would have like their heat ducts pop up out of the floor and like just all kinds of crazy shit happening around their house. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to be inconsequential whether they were home or not.
Yeah.
And the only pattern I found too was the time it was. It was always between 3 and 4 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Like when I'd hear stuff going off. Like I remember that I had a clock when I'd walk in the kitchen. You'd walk in and look directly at the oven, and I had a digital clock in my oven or whatever. And anytime I'd hear stuff in the middle of the night in the kitchen, it was always between 3 and 4, like 3:10, 3:30, 3:45. It was always in that window.
I wonder if that's not around the time that maybe he was murdered.
Well,
or maybe that's getting into fights all the time or something.
Yeah. I do know he was murdered in the kitchen. That I do know.
Okay.
The neighbor told me that.
Are so.
Well, 3
All
o'clock.
he wanted was some cereal.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Fighting over cereal. You took
serial killer.
Serial killer.
What if they were both eating? What if that's what they were doing? They're both sitting at the table eating a bowl of cereal.
I think he might have killed himself by accident eating his own cereal, and they just blamed it on him because they couldn't tell that story.
Yeah,
right.
Cereal just snapped, crackled, and popped a little bit too much, right?
Yep. Goddamn Fruit Loops.
Trust my fucking Lucky Charms.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting that you say that this all occurred mostly between 3 and 4 because 3 o'clock is often cited as being what's called the witching hour. It's I think it's theorized that is the time that the veil, I guess you want to call it, between this world and the spiritual world is the thinnest, and it's commonly reported that starting between 3 and 4, starting at 3 and lasting till 4, that's when most paranormal activity occurs. So
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also a really common time to visit Zane's mom. But
yeah. If you won't wake up, we can get what you want.
That's the idea.
Oh God, but yeah, I just thought that was very interesting that that you pointed that time out specifically. I did want to ask too. I was going to ask you earlier about it, but we got to talking about other stuff. So the episodes of sleep paralysis, those happened multiple times, or did it just happen once? Okay.
It happened like maybe 5-6 times.
Okay.
After the furnace went down or whatever. Mm-hmm. So but like I said, it was only a couple weeks after that happened that I moved out, and it's never happened to me since. So
okay.
So Casey, when we went to my farm last week or whatever, and you got out and you felt that like lurking, heavy feeling, did you feel that at that house at all?
No.
Okay.
The first night I did, that like your farm has got like bad juju. I don't know what to call it. It's like when you brought me out there last week, I think I said something about it too when I got out of the pick. It just felt,
you went stiff as a board. Same thing happened to Zane when he went there.
It just feels heavy. There's a heavy feeling in the air. It's real. I don't know. No, the first night in that house, it just, there's a setting there. You're in a strange place, and it's candlelit. There was no electricity. I was there by myself. It's an old house. It was just creepy.
Is that the
It
night
was
you lost your virginity?
God.
You had a succubus or
Yeah, he lost it with your mom.
A lot of men have lost their virginity to Luke's mom.
Are you the key master?
So if you've been with Luke's mom, don't feel so special.
Yeah.
even though
like I
she may
said,
tell you otherwise.
It didn't feel like it was something that wanted me gone. It felt like I was, a fly on the wall. Like, you know what I mean? Like that old saying, if I was a fly on the wall in the room, it felt like that's what I was in something else's domain. You know what I mean? I was just in the way, it wasn't vindictive or anything like that. I didn't get any feelings like that. It just felt like whatever was going on there, I was just observing it. It wasn't interacting.
Yeah.
Right.
I can kind of
think that had anything to do with your carbon monoxide, since your detectors and stuff didn't go off, or do you think it was just a fluke deal?
I found that very weird, and so did the guys from the HVAC company. They found it very weird too, because everything was working properly. They threw it out in the yard too, so they didn't want to go in my house. Apparently, that's a pretty freaky thing. Well, he told me he'd never seen that in Perham too. The guy that replaced my furnace or whatever. So I was renting the house. So the landlord got in touch with them, and they sent somebody over that afternoon or whatever. And he opened up all my doors and windows, and like he was basically explaining to me how bad of a deal this was. Like it doesn't happen very often, and I was pretty lucky to be alive. And that's what the doctors had said too. So
yeah, I can kind of relate to you as well, with that fly on the wall feeling. And I've never had sleep paralysis, but when I moved into where I'm living now, the first couple nights, I actually, for the first time, experienced sleepwalking. I had never done that before. And it's freaky. I mean, it's scary because you don't feel like you're in control of yourself, and then you wake up and you're standing up somewhere, and instead of being in bed where you're supposed to be, which is where you left yourself, you don't feel like you have any control over yourself. And a few times I almost died that way, because where I'm living now, we have these really steep steps down to a basement area. And a few times I woke up at the foot of those stairs. If I had tried to walk down those stairs, sleepwalk down those stairs, I would have fallen and broken my neck, and I would have died. So it's scary. I can understand that. I can relate to you on that.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't know if that's anything to do with what was it could have been 100%, attributed to, I just had freaking carbon monoxide poisoning. So
yeah, that is odd though, that you would experience that when, to me, what it sounds like is your house, it doesn't sound like a poltergeist. What it sounds like is your house was haunted. It had a spirit in there, and it may have been doing some things to try to get your attention, or to make itself, make you aware of its presence, and that's what it sounds like to me, is that it was just a haunting, and it probably was the individual that got murdered in there.
Could be.
The fact that it all kind of started before the furnace thing, though, right? Did it not?
Yeah, the furnace thing was
so
very end. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that the furnace thing happened in the midst of all of this is kind of curious to me as well. Like, if it was something malicious or whatever,
yeah,
that could have possibly caused that to happen, and
yeah.
What's the chances my daughter opened the window that night too? I thought,
yeah.
She never did that. That wasn't, and it's an old house. It's not easy to open the windows. The windows are old.
Right.
They're old wooden windows that have been painted a bunch of times, and
yeah.
Yep.
And she's a little thing. You know my daughter, Luke. She's just a little thing. So.
Yep.
Did she tell you that she opened the window, or
no? Her window was open. So.
So do you think maybe it had opened the window to save your life?
It wouldn't have saved my life. It was open in her. So her bed was literally right by the window. So her head lays, the window's right to her head or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd be more for the daughter than it would be for him.
I was going to say, so did she actually open the window? Does she remember opening the window?
I've never asked her if she opened the window or not. I just assumed she did because it was the window.
See, that would be curious in the midst of all this too. If whatever this thing was possibly caused that situation, if it also opened her window, right?
Yeah.
You got to remember during this whole thing too. Like I didn't believe in this shit either. Like this has been years now of me pondering like what the hell happened. You know?
Yeah.
While this is all going on, it's just in my head, just it's a what the hell is going on kind of thing, you know? Am I losing my mind? Is this a real thing?
What's your thoughts on it now? Are you a believer now, or are you still a skeptic?
I'm 100%. After everything, I mean, yeah, 100. There's just no the kitchen. The kitchen made me a believer. There's just no explaining it. There's so many nights I walked into my kitchen, like where I would make sure before I went to bed, it got bad enough to like before I went to sleep at night, I'd make sure everything was shut or whatever. I could see my daughter's room or whatever. You know, down my bed, the foot of my bed looked directly down the hallway to my daughter's room. So if I'm laying in bed and look straight down, I can see her bedroom door right in front of me, you know, 20 feet away.
Yeah.
And I'd stay up or whatever, and then I'd hear crap in the kitchen, and I'd be looking at her door. And I knew she didn't come out, but I'd still, you know, in my head, it was illogical. So I'd get up to go see if Kelly was in the kitchen, and a freaking drawer would be open, or the fridge would be open, or a cabinet would be open, and I heard it open.
Yeah,
it made no sense.
Yeah,
whatever happened in that house, I don't know what it was, but I believe in it 100%.
Do you know how old that property actually was? Like when it was built?
The house was built in like the late 50s, early 60s.
Okay, all right.
So
you said it was old. So
yeah, it was an old house. Yeah. It's in the older part of town. But yeah, I don't know the history of the property. I don't know.
While all this was happening, did you have any like weird urges?
As far as what?
Like, did you have any like thoughts of doing something that you wouldn't normally do? Like, in other words, like different activities, like something you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, like murdering someone with a spoon. Did you think to do that? No.
Not necessarily even that, but you think about like, even entertainment activities, right? Like I'm just curious if there was anything different.
No, dude, I was so busy. I was a single dad. Like my routine was hectic. This is when I met you. And actually, now that you bring that up, you had told me that was the happiest you'd ever thought you'd saw me. It was when I lived in that house or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
But I was so busy, dude. I'd get up. I'd run my daughter to daycare or, whatever. And so I'd have to get her to daycare. I drove a milk truck. I'd have to fly through the day and try to get through the day without any issues so I could get back in time to get my daughter from daycare, my milk route. And that's hard to do. That works because you can sit at the creamery or whatever. And then get her home, make her dinner, get her showered or whatever, and get her ready for bed, get her tucked in. And then I had my 45 minutes in the evening to kick my feet up and watch Family Feud or something. It was pretty...
Yeah, you barely have time in a day to take a shit.
Yeah, it was pretty normal, single mom routine is what I would call it. Yeah.
Right.
My curiosity with this is if the people before the one that murdered the guy with the spoon, if they had been experiencing any activity, stop it. Stop it, you're gonna make me laugh. If they had been experiencing any sort of activity, and if maybe this entity was in that house before, and maybe
it's funny you bring that up because this is something I've thought about, and I've done a little research on it after now or whatever, and I made it a point not to interact with it, to not acknowledge anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever. I didn't even know it was a thing, but whatever was going on, I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't try to communicate with anything or anything like that. And some stuff I've read into now, apparently that is the way to go about it. Because if
no doubt,
yeah, we talked about a property that I lived at on the last show that was very haunted with a very negative entity in it, and the activity in the house actually did not pick up until I started acknowledging its presence. And I did that using ghost hunting software on my phone that I downloaded, and I was just curious as to what was in that house because I always felt that it was haunted, and so I used like a spirit box. I used EMF reader, which I don't think was accurate, but and I used like a Ovulus word bank selector that spirits are said to be able to select words from the word bank to communicate with you. And when I started acknowledging its presence, that's when the activity in that house really picked up big time.
Yeah, and that was what I was getting at. Is I wonder now. I didn't wonder then, but I wonder now if if there was two men living in that house, I could see dudes being like, let's mess with it or whatever. So
yeah,
if they did, you know what I mean? If they did see or hear, if they experienced anything like I experienced, if they started talking about it, and then I could just see that being a rabbit hole for a couple dudes.
Casey, not to bring up the subject or whatever, but how close in correlation with your dad's death was this?
5 years. 4 years. My daughter was 5, so it's 4 years after my dad died.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you have him there at that time?
Yep.
And I'm referring to his ashes, guys, not actually.
But
like
he was in the house that I had prior to that, and he was also in this house till I buried him last summer. So, but
I mean, that could even explain the open window, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
like looking out for me kind of deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The reason I brought up what I was talking about before is I'm wondering if that entity was there and it influenced one of those guys to kill the other guy,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, that was my question. I know you don't have the answer to it, so but it's curious.
Could be.
Well, if Casey's dad was there, I can tell you they didn't want to fuck with Troy. He was a handful when he was alive. Actually, Zane, you knew Casey's dad.
Oh, really?
Troy Ash, racetrack. I'll explain it. I'll explain it later.
Did I do something wrong, or did I get into it with him, or what?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I got into it with him one night, but
you didn't go out with a spoon or anything, did you?
No.
No. With a spoon.
No. Troy would have tied me up and fist fucked me. So.
All right. So, getting back on track. Do either of you have any more questions for Casey about what he went through and what he experienced?
No, not in particular.
It was just only between 3 and 4. It never happened. Well, obviously, when your girlfriend, now wife, seen the figure, that was obviously.
Yeah, and she's the one who actually saw anything, which it never made sense to me. Because she saw it on 2 occasions. She went to drop my daughter off at my house. I was up at the creamery, so I was just unloading. I was going to be home in like 10, 15 minutes. So she pulled my driveway to drop Kinley off or whatever, and there was somebody standing in the kitchen window. So that was the first time. There was nobody there. Again, just a silhouette. And then the second time, it was over a phone. My phone was on video chat or whatever. I ran over to Katie's, left my phone in my daughter's room on video chat just in case she got up or something, that she didn't wake up and think she was alone. It was just a couple minutes away. Her house was just a couple minutes away from my house.
Right.
Yeah.
So I could run home. And I set my phone up. She heard me leave. She knew I was gone. And I got to the house over here or whatever, and she was freaking out because she saw somebody standing over Kinley. And again, it was just a dark silhouette. I went back home. Kinley was sound asleep. Nobody in my house.
Okay. What time was that?
10 o'clock at night, maybe.
Okay. So the silhouettes were obviously earlier, in the day or later in the afternoon, but the other weird shit was that 3 to 4, the drawers and the stuff like that.
Anytime anything in my house moved, that's why. That's why I thought, poltergeist to be the only word I could use to describe shit moving. I thought that's what moved shit, was a poltergeist. I don't know a lot about that, so.
Yeah. Well, the reason I don't think it's a poltergeist is poltergeist theory has changed over the time of paranormal study. The current theory on poltergeist theory is that poltergeist activity is not actually a haunting so much as it's a manifestation of someone's negative emotions. So they are manifesting the activity themselves, and we're talking very negative emotions like just severe depression, just trauma, and just very severe trauma, and it's theorized that it's not, like I said, it's not like an actual haunting of a spirit. It's actually an individual.
Sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, an individual that is suffering from very severe emotional negativity, whether it be depression or, like I said, trauma, and they are manifesting that sort of activity themselves. So, and you said that Luke told you that you look like you were the happiest man in the world. So I can't say that maybe you were, maybe you were suffering from severe depression, or maybe you were suffering from some sort of trauma. Would you like to elaborate on that, if you were or not?
I don't know. I mean, it was whatever, like a rougher time in my life, but I've been through way worse. So I don't think it was. No, I don't think I was in an emotionally devastating state or anything like that. It was.
Yeah.
My first crack at being a single dad. So
yeah,
that's about stressful, not depressing. You know what I mean? It was just
right.
And if
the stress of daily grind.
Yeah,
so.
If you were the one that was manifesting that sort of activity, you would still be experiencing it even where you're at right now, and you're not. So,
and I've never experienced it since the day I left either. So
yeah,
it's something I thought was awesome.
Yeah, my theory.
No, I definitely think the house.
Yeah, it was the house, and it was something in the house, and it probably had something to do with the murder that took place in that house. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out there, that I don't think it was a poltergeist. But, I mean, it could have been, but I don't know. I mean, a theory is just a theory, right? Until it's proven. So,
like I said,
my thought with labeling it as a poltergeist would be based solely on whether or not it was the one that caused the issue with the furnace that almost killed him, right? That's
yeah. No, spirits can do that too. So,
right.
Yeah, they can do that too, and especially if they want you out bad enough, and
Yep.
So, yeah. Zane, you have anything to add? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Luke.
Nope, go ahead, guys. Go ahead. I'm just kind of thinking here about the furnace deal and the times and stuff like that is all. Just trying to put stuff together and trying to find rhyme or reason for stuff, I guess. That's what I always do. I kind of observe, and then I start thinking about it, then I start asking questions, and like last weekend with the Hat Man and stuff. So
yeah.
But, just taking it all in.
I can kind of relate to the whole situation. I think on our pilot interview with each other, when we first decided to do this whole thing, I told you guys this story, and I might as well retell it because it's definitely worth telling, and it's kind of related to this topic. So my very first apartment was when I was 16, 17 years old, and it was in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, and it was a place called the Axel Nelson apartment building, and it was a clapped out old railroad service building. Back at the turn of the century, it was like a rest house for employees for the railroad. There was like a separate house out back that was the bathhouse at one point. And this giant house was split up into a whole bunch of different apartments, and it was cheap. It was $300 a month, and it was cheap enough that my bathroom was down the hallway, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some similar experiences to what Casey was explaining. The first one was we were watching a movie in the living room. So it was my chair, and then to the left of it was a couch, and we had a lady friend over, and she was sitting closest to me on the couch, and on the other end of the couch was my cousin Chad. We watched a movie, and this was back in the VCR days, and kind of dating myself there. And the movie finished, and it went through the credits, and then it went to blue screen. And I looked over, and this gal that we knew that was there was crying, like bawling her eyes out. And I looked across at my cousin. I was like, "Man, what the hell did you do?" He's like, "I didn't do anything." And she said, "No, look." And I looked to my right, and on my right was this coat rack that it was there when I moved in. It was just an old ass coat rack. And when I looked to the right, the coat rack was swaying, and kind of startled me. And she said that when the movie finished and it turned to blue screen, that she saw somebody get up in between me and that coat rack. Like they're sitting on the floor, like they got up and walked straight away from me into the other room. I never saw the figure or whatever it was, but I did look over and the coat rack was swaying.
Okay.
So that was the first experience in that apartment. And mind you, there's been that building has a very colorful history. There's lots of crazy stuff that's happened there, and the second thing that happened,
all the crazy shit happens in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to think. I think you guys in Minnesota are got a couple wires crossed. I think.
No, it's probably something in the water, that they're drinking.
No doubt.
So,
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, you got guys killing other folk with spoons, and
Yeah.
guys, shit happen all over that state. It seems like.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, I mean, you said that crazy shit was happening in that building. Before that, it had a colorful history. Can you go into more depth about that?
Yeah. So the building had been around since the latter part of the 1800s, and so at one point there was even a madam, like a brothel type of setup in one part of the building, and like it was a full service take care of the railroad workers type of spot.
Yeah. Okay.
Like kind of place that Zane's mom would have lived, and
she would have worked there. What are you talking about?
Good God.
That woman's laying some tracks.
I mean, Zane's old enough. I mean, he was probably around back then. So.
Yeah. Where do you think this story of John Henry came from?
Yeah. God. All right.
But so I know of like several random weird assaults, and I know for a fact there's been people that have been killed there over the years, and it was always just a low budget, cheap, scummy apartment place, right? And it was definitely not where you'd want to end up with your first apartment at that age. And I tell you, it was quite a learning experience.
Yeah.
Well, let me elaborate on something too, Luke. As far as my whole story goes, like I've always been a skeptic. Like Glendon, you're from the same town I grew up in, Luke. Remember that old cemetery outside of town, out by the railroad track? So we used to go there out at night and like actually try to see shit and try to whatever. I mean, I've always called bullshit because I've done shit like that. Like I've gone out to the cemetery at night, never saw nothing. Whatever. Went out haunted housing when I was a kid, never saw nothing. Like I said, this is the only time in my life I've ever experienced anything, in quotes, supernatural or whatever you want to call it. It was just so fucking bizarre. Like it was just, I don't know. I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say that I'm more of the open-minded type. I don't necessarily, I would say I'm skeptical. I can only go off of things that I've experienced. And one of them I covered last week was this shadow thing that I experienced in the woods, and then one of the only other real odd things that I've experienced is kind of this whole thing. And so there's even a spot in the corner of the basement of this old building. It's an old stone foundation building. There's a stone room, like a square stone room, like a dungeon in there. It didn't have a door on it when I was there at that time or whatever, but it was actually used at one point to store deceased railroad workers until their families came and claimed them. So there's a long laundry list of weird, odd things that have happened there over the years, or simple life things even, I suppose. But so my second instance there was, like I said, my bathroom was down the hallway, and about halfway to the bathroom on the left is another apartment. It's a door. It was closed. And on the right was like this open storage room kind of thing. And there was a few things in there. And one of the things happened to be a rocking chair, like an old wooden rocking chair. And it's pretty dimly lit. And I'm walking down the hallway to go to the bathroom, and I look to the right into this room as I go by, and the rocking chair is rocking all by itself.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where you split second, like, how bad do I really got to take a leak,
Yeah, I probably
so.
I would have pissed myself and not needed to use the bathroom.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I mean, it was bad enough. I was contemplating going back and pissing in my sink. Yeah. You're scared at that point. But I made it to the bathroom, and it took me a long time to come back out of the bathroom because I was so freaked out.
I'm sure.
Got
Well,
back
I tell
out.
you what, when you can be a skeptic on stuff like this, but my experience with my friend that killed himself, it made me a believer in a goddamn hurry. Kind of like Casey's deal and Luke's deal there. It'll make you can call bullshit on anything you want until you experience it. Then you go, oh shit. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can ask valuable questions, and as far as that goes. But as far as speaking on things, I can only confirm or speak on things that I've experienced.
Well,
And-
right. Human beings are natural, most of them anyway, are naturally rational. And so while these things are going on, you rationalize everything like, oh, it's this, or oh, it's that, or it's headlights, or it's, you just try to rationalize everything. And it's not till time's gone on and I've sat and thought back on everything that went on and what I experienced or whatever. And like, there was nothing natural about it,
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's another part of the topic we covered last week was like Zane and I as avid outdoorsmen, we tend to have a pretty rational explanation for anything that we see outdoors or sounds or things like that.
Yeah.
Even if it's not exactly a match in our minds, that must be that.
Yeah.
So
I got
a
it.
part I forgot to mention too is so I had a budgie, if you know what a budgie is. It's like a little parrot. And Luke, you met Peanut, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I had a little budgie. He was my homie. I played guitar. Obviously, I'm in a band, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So Peanut was my budgie's name or whatever. He'd sit on my shoulder and rock out with me or whatever. But his cage was in my living room. And the only time Peanut ever made a peep, he'd just sit in the mirror and look at himself, and whatever. If you've ever had a bird, that's what they do. You hang a mirror in their cage and it entertains them. The only time Peanut would ever make any noise at all is if a person was around. Like if I walked in the living room, he'd go ape shit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that would happen in the middle of the night is Peanut would just go ape shit in the middle of the night. Like, whistling, like when he saw me, you know what I mean? He'd whistle and he'd want attention. You know what I mean?
So this happened at the same property that you were speaking about?
It happened all the time in the middle of the night. Yep. Same.
Okay, so was that from the very start?
Yeah, Peanut always went nuts though in that house.
The reason I ask is I think about like coal miners using canaries as yeah. And I could have been Peanut trying to, you know what I mean?
Trying to
Well, it could have been. Like I said, it's just stuff I realized thinking back, not at the moment or whatever. It was just my fucking birds going nuts at 3:00 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But when we lived here, I mean, I had Peanut for four more years here or whatever. He didn't do that here, so it might not mean anything. I don't know. It's something I thought of.
Well, I mean, it's a definite oddity that you experienced there, and seems like a very odd property. I would like it if you were to go back there and actually talk to the people that are living there now and see what they think or see what they've experienced.
I said that in the beginning. I still drive by the house all the time. I still live in town, and I've thought about doing that many times.
You drive by and leave a spoon on their steps.
give them a damn bag of Cheerios or something,
Right. So the last thing that happened at that apartment building, I have a little bit of a story to go with that as well, and it kind of would explain my where I was mentally at the time, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to know the owner of the apartment building well enough that he gave us the key to the basement to do laundry, and he normally kept it locked. There was a washer and dryer down there, and I went down to switch the laundry over, and it's a set of stone steps going down into the basement, and there's no light switches or anything. It's I would imagine that I would imagine there wasn't even electricity when this place was built. So there's a light and it's straight ahead, but you got to like wave your arm trying to find the drawstring for it in the dark. And I'm walking straight ahead, waving my arm, trying to find this drawstring, and I bumped into someone, like straight up bumped into a person. I felt their hand brush by me. I felt their fingernails brush on my arm. The whole shebang. Like I bumped into somebody, and within a split second, I found the drawstring, turned the light on. There's nothing in the room close to me. There's nobody there. Nothing.
Mm.
And I beat feet and half killed myself getting back up the steps and getting the hell out of there. And I ended up talking to somebody else, and I think into going down there and getting my clothes out even. That's probably the scariest experience I've ever had with anything, and the most profound paranormal experience I've ever had.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think that that anything is? What do you think that is? That that's something I've pondered a lot since since I lived there or whatever. What is it, like another realm? Is it like a spirit stuck here? What is it?
I think some of it is situational, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Do you ever think it's time? They say time's linear. Do you ever think it's like a time loop? Something,
It could
there
be.
just happened to be a structure in the same place a structure was,
Yeah.
centuries ago.
Yeah. Well,
Possible,
yeah. Paranormal activity has been reported since the dawn of man. I mean, you can go back in ancient history and even to like ancient civilizations like ancient Rome, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, and they all have stories of ghosts. They all have stories of spirits and people coming back and haunting the living. And my personal theory, and I don't know if I told you this, Casey, but I'm a former paranormal investigator. That's how I got started in the Midnight Chronicles, in doing this podcast. But my theory from everything that I've experienced is that there is a physical world, a physical plane, and then you have the spiritual world, or the spiritual realm, or the spiritual plane that we pass on to after we die. And I'm not exactly sure what allows someone to remain after they pass away, to be able to interact with the living, which you would call a haunting. I have no idea what would constitute, because I mean, if everyone who has ever died was able to come back and interact with the living, then we would have hauntings everywhere.
Sure, but let me ask you this, Doc. Do you think it could be like, I'm a big history nut as well. So do you think it could be human civilization today is so detached spiritually that we're just you read about shamans and Native American culture, shamans and the South American jungle now, they have these spiritual journeys. Do you think it's just we're so detached that the veil's thicker for us than it would have been, for people in history
Absolutely.
that were more spiritual than we are?
Yes.
Probably. Yeah, I would think that because, like we were talking about earlier, usually activity picks up after you acknowledge it, after you
Right.
give it some acknowledgement, and that might thin the veil between this world and the spiritual world. And then at certain times during the year, or even certain times during the day, like I was talking to you about 3 o'clock being what's called the witching hour, which is usually when a lot of paranormal activity happens, and well enough about that because you experienced it yourself. I think there are certain times that the veil between this world and that world are thinner. But I don't know, when it comes to paranormal research and study and investigation, you oftentimes get more questions than answers, and you're
Sure.
usually always trying to, and sometimes it feels like you're trying to answer one question with another question. And so I don't know exactly what happens, but my theory is that we have, and then you have like the parallel universe theory, which there are so many parallel universes, and I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Like I said, I've in doing this for long enough, and I did this for over 10 years, and I ended up with more questions than I did answers. And but I do definitely think that there is a spiritual world. And
Well, to touch back on your spiritual plane you were talking about, Luke, I know I talked to you about this, but have you ever? I don't do drugs. I'm a pretty straight shooter or whatever. But what made me more of a believer in another realm than anything was last summer. I did a DMT trip. I don't know if you've ever dabbled with DMT.
me,
But
no.
yeah, it is an absolutely life-changing experience. If you've never, I don't do anything. I don't even drink. So, but yeah, me and my the old band I was in, me and the guitar player from that band. It was just me and him in his garage or whatever. It wasn't a bunch of people, but I told you about this, Luke. I did a DMT trip and encountered an entity, and it brought me on this journey that was actually very beneficial. Sounds fucking nuts, but this is an absolute true story. But so it brought me on a journey, and like my subconscious is the best way I could explain it or whatever, and my dad committed suicide. I don't know if I talked about this earlier or not, but this entity brought me, to an image of my dad, and my dad was like falling down this dark hole, and I kept trying to catch him, but I couldn't catch him, and it was like I took it as it was time to let go of that. You know what I mean? It brought me on all these little journeys, and when I came back from it, like it was it was a very spiritual thing, but it let me let go of things. It showed me things I should focus on in life, and things. It was really bizarre, but very beneficial. But it was the entity was so real to me. It wasn't like I was tripping. I was interacting with something that was very, very, very real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds a lot like a native thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what the shaman, and that's what got me interested. It was Rogan that got me interested in it. Terrence McKenna. And but yeah, it's what the shaman in South America do. It's called ayahuasca down there. But you can get a synthetic version of it where it's straight DMT, and you smoke it instead of drink it. And it's I don't know. It's not like a mushroom or anything like that.
Well, DMT is actually a compound that is naturally occurring in the body in small amounts.
They think it's the chemical your pineal gland releases when you die. Mm-hmm. They think that the body goes through as, its spiritual journey into the afterlife or whatever.
And that's kind of what I was touching on last episode was, when someone's sleeping and have that sleep paralysis situation. And I touched on like, maybe that's the particular time of night where their chemical production is highest in their bodies. That DMT, maybe it's possible that
DMT might be possible. It might be possible that it's responsible for dreams as well.
Sure, and that's kind of why I mentioned it, because I think almost everybody that does DMT experiences these elvish people, like the elves or whatever they call them.
Yeah,
and everybody that does it seems to experience the same beings or people or whatever.
That's what was bizarre about it. Me and Joe had very similar. I don't even like to call it a trip because that's not exactly what it was, but we had very similar experiences.
Yeah. Well, Casey, I want to tell you first and foremost, I'm sorry about your dad. And I don't know if you were listening to last show, but my dad also committed suicide. So I just want to give you my condolences. And
vice versa, man. I know what you've been through. I can say that.
Yeah, same here.
Well, there's a reason I touched on this actually. And it kind of correlates to my situation in that apartment building I was talking about. So, and also part of the reason, Casey, why I asked if you had any like urges for any specific activities that you wouldn't normally do or something like that. So for me, I didn't have much for furniture, and I found actually the same room where this rocking chair was down the hallway. I found this old, just like a sitting chair, and I took it out of there, and I don't know why, but I doted on this thing, and I ended up painting it. I mean, it was like my prized possession at the time, and I don't know why, because it wasn't even that comfortable of a chair. It was just maybe something to do. I don't know.
This is the same rocking chair that you saw.
No, negative, but came from the same room.
Okay. All right.
It was just an abandoned chair, and spent all my time in this chair, and it was probably one of the lowest points in my life. And me and my cousin, just for shits and giggles one night, and I don't know where the idea came from, but we ended up we had this extension cord and we were playing around with it. We tied a noose with an extension cord, right? And it stayed around. Like we both tied like a noose a few different times, just messing around, see if we could do it, kind of thing. And then it stayed around, and then, for a couple of weeks, and things got pretty dark for me. And I actually went in my closet in my bedroom, and I actually hung it in my closet and put it around my neck. And my dad showed up also. I mean, this kind of corresponds with possibility of an open window in your dad's situation, right, Casey? Like, my dad actually showed up. My dad never came to my apartment. My dad showed up in a panic, banging on my door, and to this day, I don't know what made him come to my apartment and come in such a panic. I mean, he was yelling at the door, pounding. It was almost like he knew what I was doing or something.
Right.
Did he say anything to you about that, or did he say anything to the fact that you put a noose around your neck, or what?
No, he didn't even know about it. I mean, even after I answered the door, he didn't know about it.
What was the reason? What was the reason for the panic?
He had a bad feeling, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Like some sort of intuition, I guess, and came in like just in a panic, asking me what I'm doing and what's going on, and I can't attribute a whole lot to my dad, but my dad saved my life that day, and
so you were actually thinking about going through with that, or?
Oh, I was there, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, I was gonna do it, and I can't explain why I was even in that spot, and it just had something to do with where I was at in life, maybe, but also the energy of this place I was living in. I think I personally feel like it had something to do with it.
Oh yeah.
Because that's not something that's not me, and nor would it ever be. I think you guys know me well enough to know that that's not my MO. You know what I mean? And so I have no explanation for the whole situation or why my dad felt the sudden panic urge to come and find out what the hell was going on with me and knock on my door and right at that specific moment.
I don't know if that's a father thing or what, but I can remember before I got custody of my son, I woke up and shot out of bed in the middle of the night one night and grabbed the phone and called his mom and said, "What's going on with Coy?" And she goes, "Well, he's sleeping." I said, "Go check on him." She goes, "What's your deal?" And I said, "Go check on him." Well, here he was vomiting in his sleep. And he was still sleeping, and he was sick, but he was throwing up in his sleep, and she went and rolled him over and stuff like. I mean, so it was just,
sick.
It's completely different to where he was not in the situation you were, but not a life or death situation, but just something woke me up and said there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in Fargo, and he lived out here, of course. So I mean, it was just. I wasn't even having a dream. I just woke up and shot out of bed.
Yeah.
Just had a bad feeling.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was almost like my dad had a camera on me. I know he didn't, stuff like that didn't exist at the time or whatever, but it's like he knew,
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah. So my dad is not, had never been an emotional person. Actually, quite the opposite. Quite emotionally detached.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him to show up in that kind of a panic, I mean, there wasn't much that got a rise out of the guy ever usually. And for him to show up in that much of a panic, banging on my door and hollering, and like I originally wasn't even going to answer the door. I was just going to keep on with what I was doing. But the amount of panic and his voice raised, and he pounded harder and harder on the door. It's like he knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I have no explanation for how or why. And
he never questioned you on it or anything like that. He just
he kind of just asked me what was going on, and that day specifically, I think I was ashamed enough of myself that I didn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
And actually, you guys are probably, this is probably the only second time I've ever talked about this. I never even told my dad what I was up to, but we had a discussion. I don't know, it was a couple days later, and I met him for breakfast, and we were talking, and he asked me what the hell I was up to the other day when he got there, and I just said, well, I was just taking a nap, kind of thing, and he was just gray in the face. He looked like he had seen a ghost kind of thing. And like I said, I never got an explanation from his side on what he experienced or why he felt that way. And I never did tell him what was actually going on, but somehow he knew.
Well, that's pretty wild, actually.
Yeah.
To answer your question, though, you asked me if I had anything in my house. Basically, you were asking me if I had anything in my house that was foreign to me, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when I moved into that house, I was starting over. So all the stuff I had accumulated, in the house I was in before, stayed in the house I was in before. And my dad was my best friend, this dude. Well, all my dad's stuff was in storage. I had it all in storage. So I furnished my house when I moved into that house with all of my dad's stuff. I had my dad's furniture, my dad's plates, my dad's whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, everything that came into that house had been in a storage unit since my dad died. So yeah, it was all my dad's stuff that came into my house. And I didn't know this till I actually finally buried my dad, but I think I actually had a pretty unhealthy relationship with my dad's remains. I've never talked about this either, so I'll give it a shot. But whatever. My dad was my best friend. You know this. He was, we were more friends than father and son. We did everything together. So the whole house thing actually pissed me off because I'd never had any. I used to talk to my dad's fucking, jar of ashes all the time. Like I always waited for that spiritual thing, that spiritual encounter with my dad. You know what I mean? And I never got
it. Yeah.
But I had this encounter with this entity or whatever it was, at this house. And yeah, dude, like I said, I used to talk to my dad's remains almost nightly. If I was having a bad day, I just like I did when he was alive. I'd sit and had, that conversation with that jar, just like I would when he was alive or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never got any kind of response. I never, still to this, never had that, whatever, that presence of my dad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I did. I furnished my house with all of his. I'm sitting in his recliner right now. It's still in my garage. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I might have turned the camera a little bit. Yeah, right up there on the wall, you can see that's my dad's hat.
Yep.
You see it?
Yep.
So, yeah. So his stuff is in here too. Most of it's down in the basement, but yeah, his hat's on the wall back there. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of my point. I don't know if there's if whatever a presence hangs on to personal belongings or whatever, but maybe. To get back to your point, maybe that's what kept me from, murdering somebody with a spoon. There was something there that was protecting me, and it wasn't so far.
Or like I said, I posed the question. Maybe that's what's saved you in that situation. Maybe that's what opened the window. Maybe that's
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Yeah, if your daughter couldn't open that window, something would have had to, and I would think that. If your dad was there, then that was probably the person that did that to save your life.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this is where it all just is speculation. You know what I mean? I have no idea.
Just a theory. Yeah, theories are theories. So
yeah, and I've never, like I said, I've never had any kind of spiritual anything with my dad since he died. So, and I've wanted it. So maybe that's why I've never got it. But
yeah.
Well, we do have to start wrapping things up here, guys. And usually, Casey, what we'll do is we will vote on whatever it is that we're talking about, whether it be like the Shadow People and the Hat Man last time. Usually we'll end the show with a vote on the credibility of whatever it is that we're talking about, but I don't think we need to end the show that way. I think you're completely credible, and I've given you my theories on what exactly it is that you went through, and again, I want to express my sincerest condolences for the loss of your dad, because I've been there too. So I don't think we need to end the show with a vote. That just doesn't feel right to me. So
no, I concur. I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah. So do any of you, Luke, Zane, do you have any final thoughts for him or anything that you want to ask?
I got nothing. I think we've kind of covered everything I had in mind, and
just one last thing. How long before he moved into the house did your dad pass away?
Oh, it would have been 4 years. 4 years before he moved into that house.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But this is the first time that you had his belongings out of storage.
I had all of his stuff in my house. Yep. Yeah, like I said, I was starting over and I didn't have anything. So
I personally believe that it was the gentleman that got murdered there that was doing everything.
Yeah, I think so too.
I really do.
Spoon Man.
Yeah, we got the Hat Man and the Spoon Man.
Yeah. Lord only knows what we're going to come up
with
next.
That's just my opinion, and the window opening up, that almost seems to me more like they were feeling bad for the girl, trying to save the girl, and not necessarily Casey himself.
Right.
But that's just my observation, just my opinion.
Yep.
Whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
maybe if you'd have walked through that house with a spoon, that thing wouldn't have fucked with you ever.
Like I said,
no doubt.
We've like I said, we've redefined what it means to spoon with somebody on this show. So
I know my condolences go out to both you guys for your fathers. That's got to be horrible.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I appreciate it. So.
Yeah, me too. Appreciate it, Zane.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
No,
Zane.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's not something I ever thought about putting on the internet. That's for sure. It's kind of a
You kind of feel like a dumbass at first, don't you? Like,
Yeah.
I don't say nothing, but what happened, so you have to,
I'm-
Yeah.
I'm sort of in the same boat. Some of the details I talk to you guys about are things that I've never really told anybody other than maybe my wife. So
Yeah, it's
well,
personal.
the only person I've ever told this story to prior to tonight. I mean, obviously my wife has heard this, but was Luke. I mean,
Yep.
it sounds fucking crazy. So you know what I mean? It is.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
But that's what the show's all about is contemplating the crazy, inexplicable things that exist or that people experience.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, if it wasn't for the experience with my dog and the experience with my friend that committed suicide, I would have called you guys full of shit and said, you guys need to stay off the internet because you're getting brainwashed by something. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
And until it happens to you, you're going, hell yeah, this is, there's something going on. But
Yeah.
you can't explain it. You got no answers for it, but I got a lot of questions,
Yeah, and I want to be the first one to say this too, that I really do appreciate you both opening up, here in this circle, to the stuff that you went through and the kinds of stuff that you've experienced. I really do appreciate that, and I value that a lot, and bless you.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't hit mute in time.
No, you're fine. But I want the Midnight Chronicles to be a safe space for us to be able to discuss those sorts of things, and so I just wanted to let you guys know that I've discussed some things on here that I don't normally talk very much about. My dad's suicide being one of them. So I just want to let you guys know that I really do appreciate it. This isn't just for the show's not just for views or whatnot. It is a real discussion. In this circle, and I just want to let you guys know that I really do appreciate you guys sharing what you did.
Yeah, likewise.
Can I end on something, Doc?
Yeah.
So the thought I've always had since all this stuff happened or whatever, like if I could ask a question, the one question I would have is, I lived in the house. I just seen stuff out of the corner of my eye. Why it made itself visible to my now, my wife.
Mm-hmm.
She's the only, I always found that odd. She's the only person who ever actually saw something like,
Mm-hmm.
not out of the, I've always found that strange.
Yeah. Like I
think they react different to different people, maybe.
Yeah. I think honestly, what in it doing that, I think that it was just trying to get your attention and make itself known, and being that it probably felt that you were the head of the household, and then right behind you was your now wife or your girlfriend at the time. It was probably trying to make itself known to what it felt was the now owners of that house, and so it showed itself to you, and then it showed itself to your girlfriend. And I don't think your daughter was old enough at that time to be able to tell you whether or not she saw anything. So that would be something I would ask her when she gets older, if she ever saw anything, if she ever so I would ask her about that. Yeah.
But that is the weird thing. I never saw anything. That the only thing I ever saw was a little shadow in my eye.
Yeah.
She saw dead on a full silhouette. Like it showed itself to her. So I always found that.
Yeah. Like I said, it was just trying to make itself known, and trying to get your attention. And
also the figure, I'm sorry, Doc, I'm going to cut you off there.
Oh no, you're fine.
And also that the silhouette to him was over your daughter also, right?
Yeah, but only she saw it. She saw it through the phone. I didn't.
Right. That's what I mean. There's something where he wants to be seen by her and only her.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I always wondered why. You can't. There's no answer, obviously, but I always found it odd.
Yeah, you wouldn't know the answer to that unless you were to ask the entity itself, which I wouldn't suggest. I mean, you can't do that now, but I wouldn't have suggested it back then because, like I said, when you give something like that acknowledgement, then it makes the activity just that much stronger. stronger. And,
you go digging into the dirt, all you get is dirty. You know.
I mean, you're just digging yourself. I mean, you're opening doors you can't close, and you're digging a hole that you can't fill when you do that. So, and I learned that the hard way, but the very hard way.
It's like when I gave your mom my phone number.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Well, yeah. Now you're sick, so
Yeah,
you get what you get, right?
sets in quick.
Yeah. All right, guys. So this has been another episode of the Midnight Chronicles. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I've been joined by my co-hosts, Luke and Zane, and we've been also joined by Casey. And so we'll catch you guys back here again in another 2 weeks. And so until then, have a great night.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.